guarantee everybody a reasonable living standard. It was not possible. Again, people starved because of famine, because of the weather, and so on, except like today. And harvests were ruined, and so on and so forth. And everybody was at the very mercy of nature. So you live into hand to mouth, and there was no real. It was a very primitive basis of society. Whereas the big change came with the actual development of capitalism. Capitalism, although we can say today, well, capitalism is very bad. Look at wars, look at this, the unemployment and so on. As a system, if you read the Communist Manifesto by Marx and Engels, he says, hang on a minute, this capitalist system was in its youth, if you like, quite a revolutionary system of society, insofar as it developed the productive forces to a much greater extent than any other period in history before. And the Communist Manifesto, it says, look at it, it's conquered the world, it's created a world market, it's exported capitalism everywhere, and has created the material possibilities for a society, a new society, if it's based on those possibilities, of superabundance. And therefore he said, look, that's the role of capitalism. That class society has allowed mankind, allowed human beings to build up the possibility for their own emancipation and for the abolition of classes in society. And this was quite a revolutionary thing. Only problem is, says Marx, well, not a problem, but capitalism is not a smooth-running form of society. Capitalism, on the contrary, is a very contradictory society, insofar as it's based upon the mass of the population, the working class, you want to put it that way, which originally in a bygone age probably had access to its own limited means of production, the land and petty crafts and so on. All that was taken off them, like we know from our own experience, but our own history in Britain, the enclosure movements, which basically enclosed all land of the peasants and so on into the land of concentrated land ownership, if you like, into the hands of large-scale landowners, and that the means of production were solely built up through primitive accumulation, robbery, stealing, you name it. A minority of the population, the capitalists, began to gather in a monopoly of the means of production. So you have capitalism based upon the exploitation of the working class by the capitalists. The workers, like the slaves, like the serfs before them, did all the work, and the ruling class, took the surplus that they produced. But the revolutionary thing about capitalism is that the capitalists reinvested this surplus in building up through competition. They had to beat the competition, they had to steal the market and so on, and they could only do this by investing and building up new machines, labour saving devices, increasing the productivity of labour. So with that, the means of production developed, but of course it meant enormous wealth at one end and working class people at the other end. Until today, for instance, you have this competition is resulted in monopolies, these huge giant firms, like ICI and Toyota and Fords and goodness knows what. All these huge Walmart, doesn't remember Walmart. All these huge companies now which dominate the entire globe. And you have the concentration of wealth is so great, it's unbelievable. Not even Karl Marx would have thought about it. And I saw a fact the other day that 225 people have the wealth of $50 billion, which is equivalent to 7% of the world's population, which translating into numbers is 400 million people. So 225 people have got the wealth equivalent to 400 billion. This is the extremes of wealth, isn't it? On a world scale. We all know the figures about 1 billion people living on $1 a day, and another 1.5 billion living on $1 to $2 a day, and the fact that 10 million children under the age of 5 die every year because of malnutrition and disease, which can be cured, but they die because of want. So you have the squalor on the one hand, and you have the super riches on the other hand. I mean, when you talk about this $1 a day business, it's incredible. You can have a senior executive would earn in 1 hour more than these people have learned to earn in a year, or live on in a year. I mean, how obscene can you get? So this is how crazy things have got. You've got unemployment, because the problem under capitalism is that it's a society based upon profit and profit motive, and therefore everything is done for profit and gain. Doesn't matter what the social consequences are. It doesn't matter. That is the profit motive, and with that you have the position whereby workers who were in work were now displaced because labour-saving machinery is brought in, new technique is brought in, and they are on the dole. And you think this is a topsy-turvy world insofar as, well, surely the idea of a machine or labour-saving device is to lighten the burden of work, to make it easier to work, rather than to kick people out, and the people who are left in work have to work longer, harder hours. And this is the kind of logic of capitalism. It's not their fault, I suppose. It's just this is the system we live under. And as a result, you have mass unemployment, and you have overproduction. Now, the reason why I paused there, because think about it. Under feudalism, people went starving because there wasn't enough. There was a scarcity. There wasn't enough food, there wasn't enough things. And that produced a crisis. Today, you have the opposite. You have a crisis of overproduction. In other words, we've gone so insane, not we, because I don't include myself in this, but capitalism is so insane that it now has built up so much productive potential. It's producing too many things that the market cannot absorb at the profit. And this is not me. Obviously, all the capitalist economists talk about this. I think I've got a quote here from the Daily Telegraph, not exactly my paper, but there we are, of some months ago. Too many steel mills have been built. Too many plants making cars, computer chips, solar panels, too many ships, too many houses. They have outstripped the spending power of those supposed to buy the products. And it goes on and on and on and on. All I'm getting is how crazy. This is the nature of capitalism, that periodically we have overproduction. In other words, when there's so many people need things, I mean, old age pensioners, elderly people die every year in Britain because of the cold. I mean, there are 5 million people on the waiting list in Britain for a house. There are 14 million on or below the poverty line in Britain at the present time. There are so many things we need to do, and yet we're stopping people working. Factories are shut down, production lines are mothballed, and people are told, sorry mate, you can't work here because we got too much. And yet there's so many things needed to be done. And that's the illogic, if you like, of capitalism. And the reason why I say these things is because of the opposite that we're talking about in relation to socialism. That socialism is not based on private profit. It's based on the needs of people. And the way this can only be overcome, this be solved, if you want to solve it, is that the factories, the banks, the resources held by the small perhaps 5% of the population, perhaps less, 1, 2, 3% of the population own everything. That has to be taken out of their hands and put in the hands of the people. That's the whole point. That the only way this could be solved is that society must be run in the interests of working people itself. Not for private profit, but for people's need. Pretty idea. Need. If we need something, why don't we produce it? That is surely the best method of actually running a society rationally. So, and because under capitalism you've got everything. You've got advertising, pollution, you name it under capitalism, all because of the profit motive, which can be eliminated on the basis of eliminating the profit motive and preparing things for planning things for need. Because at the end of the day, if we have these resources, and I'll just come back to it, capitalism was run for competition. They always say that, we're all competitive and that. But hang on a sec. Inside the capitalist firms, they don't compete. They plan. Take Walmart, for instance, my favourite, right? I think it's 1.9 million people work for Walmart. It's international, ASDA. But they are very centrally planned. You know, they know exactly what is being sold in the shops, how much is being sold, because it's all, when you go to the supermarket, they've got these barcodes, it goes pick, and that then registers in the place how many is being sold, what needs to be supplied. It's all figured down to the last bottle of water, probably, and they do this through central planning. Same way like a car company, Toyota. Toyota has 60 different makes of car. It has 65 different companies in 28 countries. But Toyota runs what you call a just-in-time program, which means they have to know exactly how many component parts are needed, because they don't stock too many of them, and they immediately rush these component parts. In other words, it's dictated to, centrally, planned out centrally, because that is the most efficient and effective way of doing it. They don't go into competition with Toyota down the road, or the body plant up the road, or the wheel arches down the road over here. They combine it and plan it. It sounds pretty obvious, but all I'm saying is they always talk about competition, when in reality they do not have competition within their plants and their industries. But as soon as they leave the gates, then they go to this market, they don't even know what it is. They just, one section produces some produces something else, another produces, and suddenly you've got overproduction. They do not know what the limits of the market really is. They have tried to do it, to estimate what the limits are sometimes, and what they tend to do is cut back to what they call is excess capacity we've got. In other words, we have, instead of a firm with 100 machines actively producing goods, with workers obviously employed in them, they only produce about 50 machines. Now the rest of the 50 machines lies idle. It's excess capacity. It is not used. In other words, it is squandered. Because at the end of the day, if you do not produce these things, they will deteriorate. Obviously, it's factories deteriorate, machines deteriorate, raw materials deteriorate, things deteriorate if you just leave them. And if you can't sell them, that's exactly what happens. Under the capitalism, you have this madness of overproduction. They cannot sell the goods. So therefore, but under socialism, we will plan it.